Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's story is all about a neighbor's complaints gone too far. Stick around to hear how OP stood his ground and left the neighbors scrambling to solve their own privacy problem. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Neighbor complaints lead to a hedge's final cut. A couple years ago, we moved into a charming house set back from the main road. It's a cozy bungalow with a sprawling garden that requires constant upkeep. Our neighbor's house is directly in front of ours, also a bungalow, and beyond that, a two-story house looms overlooking both properties. To give us some privacy, a 7-foot-tall, 20-foot-long hedge ran down our shared driveway, effectively shielding the two-story house from seeing into our neighbor's backyard. Our neighbors in the front house are retirees with a paved backyard, leaving them very little to maintain except for trimming their side of the hedge. On the other side, our garden is large and demands constant work. Between mowing, pruning, and maintaining 2 ponds teeming with wildlife, I always have something to do. Despite this, the retired neighbors have made it their personal mission to ensure I keep the top of the hedge trimmed to their liking. Every time the hedge grew slightly untidy, they would be out in full force moaning about how the top wasn't trimmed properly or how it was ruining their view. It didn't matter how many times I explained that I had a large garden to maintain or that the hedge wasn't exclusively my responsibility, they insisted it was my job to keep it immaculate. After enduring years of this nagging, I reached my limit. The hedge wasn't just a chore, it had become a symbol of their relentless complaints. So when they left for holiday, I made a decision. It was time for the hedge to go. While they were away, I hired a crew to remove the entire hedge. In its place, I installed a simple 5-foot-high chicken wire fence. The fence clearly marked the property line, provided minimal privacy, and most importantly, required no maintenance from me. I felt a mix of relief and vindication as the last piece of the hedge was hauled away. Yesterday, while washing dishes in the kitchen with the window open, I heard the neighbors return from their holiday. The moment they stepped out of their car, they noticed the missing hedge. What followed was a symphony of moaning, swearing, and exasperated muttering as they stood there, realizing what I had done. I couldn't help but smirk to myself, eagerly anticipating our next encounter. Today, my neighbor came around fuming. "Neighbor, what have you done to the hedge? Where's our privacy now? Are you planning to put up a proper fence to replace it?" Me. "Well, I've done my best to maintain that hedge over the years, but it was becoming too much work. I decided it was time for a simpler solution. If you want more privacy, that's something you'll have to sort out on your side." That didn't go over well. "Neighbor, you've ruined our backyard. You had no right to do this. I'm taking this to the council." I shrugged and told them to go ahead. The hedge was on my property and I had every right to remove it. Update. For those worried about greenery, rest assured our garden is still a haven for wildlife. We have over 100 feet of hedging left and laurel. 2 large ponds in the yard are full of frogs and newts, and there's a dedicated area we've left wild for nature to thrive. The garden also boasts a few trees, making it a bustling sanctuary for birds and small creatures. As for the neighbors, I'll be waiting to hear what the council has to say, but something tells me they won't get very far. After all, I gave them years of neatly trimmed hedges. They just couldn't stop complaining. Now they'll have to figure out their privacy issues on their own. A wonderful example of be careful what you wish for. I find it humorous how your neighbors are handling their repercussions after pushing you past caring. Instead of appreciating your years of work, they bugged you into eliminating the hedge. You're still managing a lovely, growing garden while avoiding controversy, so the wildlife update is good. They should have considered privacy concerns before fighting on the hedge. I hope the council shrugs like you. And our second story. EMT versus Karen. I work 2 jobs in addition to being an EMT. One's a rather fast-paced 911 service, and the other is a non-emergency transport service where we don't have a lot of customers. While working at my non-emergency job about a month ago, I discovered that I had forgotten to pack my cell phone charger. I informed my partner that I needed to stop by a store and get one since we weren't really busy that day. After parking the trailer, we arrived at the store and entered. He headed to the outdoor area while I went to the electronics department. Now, my uniform at this particle service is a red button-up shirt, black tactical cargo pants, and black boots. Absolutely nothing like this store's uniform, but whatever. So I'm standing there looking at chargers, trying to decide which one I want, when I hear Dumb Psycho B, DPB for short, clearing her throat in an obvious attempt to get my attention. I turned and looked at her, nodded my head, and said, "How are you, ma'am?" Then turned back towards the chargers. The craziest crap I've ever witnessed. DPB, well, I'd be better if you'd stop shopping on the clock and do your job. I slowly turned my head back towards her with my mouth hanging open in complete disbelief. Me. "Lady, what are you talking about?" DPB. "I'm talking about how I need help and you're lazy butt shopping instead of helping me. I'll give you one more chance to help me find what I need before I find your manager and have you fired." Now, I know I could have just explained that I don't work there and probably ended it there, but this bee needed to learn her lesson. Me. "No, I'd rather you just go find my manager." DPB. "What a piece of crap." She storms off and I finish picking out a charger, and about that time my partner walks up. I tell him what happened and he says I must be exaggerating. That's just too crazy. Just as we're turning to go to the register to check out, I see DPB turning down the aisle with the manager in tow. DPB. "That's him there, the big one with the beard. I want him fired immediately." The manager looks extremely confused at this point. Manager. "Ma'am, I'm sorry for the confusion, but he doesn't work here. Our uniforms are blue. He's wearing red." At this point, my partner and I bust out laughing, and DPB's face turns as red as our shirts, and she starts screaming at the manager. DPB. "Then I want him thrown out of the store. I've never been treated this way before. F both of you pieces of crap." Manager. "Ma'am, they haven't done anything wrong that I can see, but if you don't lower your voice, I will have you removed from the store." The lady turns and storms off while still yelling about how unprofessional this is and how she'll never come back to this store. The manager apologizes to us and I tell him what started the issue. He thought it was hilarious and laughed about it, then walked with us to the closest register to check out. While we were checking out, our radios go off for an emergency transfer at the hospital about a mile away. "Female patient, 24 weeks pregnant in preterm labor, needs to be transferred to a higher level of care." We rush out to the ambulance, and as soon as my partner puts the truck in drive, a car stops right in front of our parking space, and DPB jumps out, phone in hand, filming herself acting like a damn fool. DPB. "These are the a-holes that embarrass me in the store. I will not let them get away with it. I want your names and your manager's number right GD now." My window rolls down and I look out. I told her our unit and company phone numbers are on the ambulance back. You can take a picture while we drive away, but we have a call. Move your car and let us go. DPB. "I don't care about your call. Jerk, F you." Me. "Lady, I told you we have a call. If you don't move your car, I'll call the cops and charge you with EMS obstruction. No more requests. Move your automobile." As soon as I mention the police, she walks back to her car, still cussing me, and gets in her car and reverses it so we can leave. I call my manager to give him a heads up. I don't know if she ever called or not, but this definitely made me realize what retail workers go through and respect them more. Wow. The fact that she followed you out of the store, blocked your ambulance, and started filming herself like she was the star of her own victim narrative is just ridiculousness. Good thing that her attempt to make a stand was immediately shut down when you mentioned cops and obstruction charges. She couldn't backtrack fast enough. And our last story. Landlord's shocking scam. How he exposed his illegal power grab. We lived in a house in New York that was divided into 3 apartments, each with its own electricity meter. Everyone paid for their own electricity bills, which seemed straightforward until we got a $600 electricity bill that made no sense. We didn't use that much power, so we started to wonder if something was off. Maybe we were hooked up to the wrong meter, or worse, someone else's consumption was being added to ours. To get to the bottom of it, I started troubleshooting. First, I confirmed we were paying for the correct meter by switching off the breaker to our meter. Sure enough, the power to our apartment went out. So, no mistake there. But the bill still didn't add up. I decided to buy an electric tracker, which measures power consumption in real time. What I found was shocking. Even when we weren't home, the meter was logging a consumption of about 2 kilowatt hours. That's like leaving a couple of space heaters running nonstop. To rule out phantom power from appliances, we unplugged every single device in the apartment. Fridge, microwave, chargers, lamps, everything, and still the meter was clocking 1.5 kilowatt hours. At this point, it was clear that something was very wrong. The final clue came when we started flipping the breaker to our meter off entirely whenever we left the house. The idea was to ensure nothing in our apartment was using power while we were away. When we returned, the breaker had mysteriously been flipped back on. Now, it didn't take a detective to figure out what was happening. Someone was deliberately turning it back on, and given that only the landlord had access to the breakers, the list of suspects was short. We contacted the power company to investigate. When they arrived, their technician confirmed our suspicions. The landlord had illegally connected another unit, or possibly his own, to our meter. Essentially, we were footing the bill for someone else's electricity. Armed with the power company's report, we approached the landlord. We gave him an option: fix the issue, reimburse us for all the months we overpaid, and cover our electricity moving forward for the same amount of time he stole from us. Frankly, it was more generous than he deserved. His response? A flat-out no. No apology, no offer to make things right, just blatant denial. At that point, we were done. We packed up and moved out, but not before taking the power company's report straight to the building code enforcement office. They were very interested in what we had to say, especially when we shared our documentation and photos of the meter setup. They promised to launch an investigation. We also hired a lawyer to pursue compensation for the overcharges. Between the lawyer's paperwork and the code enforcement violations, the landlord was suddenly facing hefty fines and potential legal consequences. A few weeks after we moved out, we heard through the grapevine that the landlord had been hit with several citations and was being investigated for other shady practices in his properties. As for us, we're happily settled in a new apartment where the electricity bill finally reflects what we actually use. So guys, keep an eye on your bills. And don't hesitate to call in the experts when something feels off. Landlords like ours count on tenants not noticing or not wanting to bother with a fight. But in this case, he learned the hard way that we weren't the type to let him get away with it. But seriously, it's satisfying to see someone take on a shady landlord and come out on top. This guy was blatantly stealing from you, and his arrogance about getting caught is mind-blowing. You gave him a chance to make it right, which is more than he deserved, and he still doubled down on being a sleazeball. It's always great to hear about these bad landlords facing actual consequences for their actions. Now he's left to deal with fines and investigations while you're in a new place enjoying a proper electricity bill. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.